Welcome everybody to the Spring 2022 lecture series of the School of Architecture and Design at New York Institute of Technology. I'm Alessandro Melis, the chair of the Lectures and Event Committee, and I would like to welcome everybody on behalf of the Dean, Maria Pebellini, who is joining today this event, also in the role of editor of the book Resilient Communities Charter of Peccioli. So I have to thank Maria twice today for the effort both in the production of this very intense and significant in terms of impact book, and also to allow us to organize this event today. By the way, today, as you can understand, considering the current political situation, the discourse on community is crucial, as it will offer opportunities also to discuss the relationship between impact, research, and decision-making processes. Before leaving the stage to the editors, I would like to share with you a greeting from Renzo Macelloni, Mayor of Peccioli, the model community that was the first urban living lab in 2019 to test the validity of the charter, also promoted by the Italian Ministry of Culture. I take the opportunity also to thank Onofrio Cutaia, the director of the Direction of Creativity of the Ministry of the Minister of Culture of the Italian government. Let me share Renzo Macelloni. One second. Apologies for the screen is a little bit slow. He just sent me this today, this afternoon.
Parlare di comunità resilienti, si continui a affrontare questo tema così importante, anche se affrontarlo con uno strumento della videoconferenza è uno strumento più arido che rende più difficile la comunicazione. Speriamo che quanto prima si possa tornare in condizioni normali e che le videoconferenze rappresentino soltanto degli elementi di integrazione e lasciano spazio anche ai contatti personali, contatti ravvicinati, contatti di presenza, che sono quelli che ci fanno capire, trasmettono meglio anche i messaggi, meglio le emozioni, ci fanno conoscere meglio e sono portatori di progetti molto più importanti. Io credo che dopo l'esperienza che abbiamo fatto a Venezia, alla Biennale, dove c'era questo messaggio forte sulle comunità resilienti e noi abbiamo avuto il piacere e l'onore di esserci e di portare una testimonianza molto importante, e che per noi è stato un momento anche per riflettere ulteriormente su questi temi e cercare di capire come portarli avanti nella nostra comunità e dare un contributo anche perché certi concetti possono diventare sempre di più concetti di uso comune, concetti praticati, concetti realizzati. Indubbiamente da tenere presente che oggi forse più di quando siamo partiti nel 2019 a Peccioli con i primi incontri che hanno messo a punto la carta Peccioli, ci sia bisogno di affrontare questi temi e quanto la resilienza possa passare da essere uno strumento anche intellettuale di costruzione di percorsi a un'esigenza fondamentale, oserei dire quasi un'esigenza esistenziale. Ovviamente siamo oggi a discutere di questa dimensione, di questi progetti, di questo aspetto culturale, passando attraverso due grandi crisi. Una, quella del Covid, che ancora non abbiamo superato definitivamente, anche se cominciamo a vedere, speriamo, un percorso diverso e un modo anche per superarlo, ma nel frattempo siamo incappati in un grande problema di squilibri, di riassetto internazionale, c'è una guerra in corso in Ucraina, che ovviamente ci pone temi serissimi sui nuovi equilibri che probabilmente a seguito di questo momento di instabilità forse verranno creati, verranno messi a punto, e ci mette sicuramente mette a dura prova la capacità delle comunità di capire ciò che sta avvenendo non solo nella nostra comunità ma a livello internazionale, e quanto questi processi internazionali incidono pesantemente o incideranno pesantemente anche nella nostra vita quotidiana, nella nostra quotidianità. Quindi forse il concetto di resilienza oggi ha un'importanza ancora superiore, forse va partendo dalla carta Peccioli, forse c'è bisogno di implementare anche alcuni concetti di fondo, perché se quando siamo partiti si pensava alla resilienza come uno strumento che una comunità ha e può dotarsi, può coltivare per, come dire, affrontare i temi della propria comunità, oggi forse c'è bisogno di allargare questa prospettiva, c'è bisogno forse di capire anche che un'idea di resilienza, un'idea di come affrontare questa grande crisi che ci devasta, e con quali strumenti la possiamo intercettare e quali strumenti culturali dobbiamo in qualche modo avere per rendere più facile questo approccio. Io ritengo ovviamente che molto spesso le prove dure sono quelle che ci portano a dare risposte migliori, ma sicuramente i rischi che corriamo sono maggiori. Io sono convinto che su questo dobbiamo continuare e spero anche che presto si possa mettere in pratica anche quegli incontri, quei rapporti che avevamo in un primo momento e poi abbiamo coltivato anche in seguito, internazionali, che potremo trovare anche a Pesce, il momento di rafforzamento di certi percorsi, di certi studi e di certe formazioni, partendo proprio dalla carta Peccioli. Noi ci siamo e vogliamo mantenere gli impegni che abbiamo preso, anzi oggi più che mai, oggi forse è ancora più urgente farsi carico di questo sistema di ragionamento.
After this introduction by the mayor of Peccioli, I would like to particularly thank the editors and all the contributors. We will have a second event with other contributors of this intense and timely publication. I would like to start with Maria Pebellini, editor of this book, together with Maurizio Carta and Antonio Hernandez. Maria is the Dean of the School of Architecture and Design at the New York Institute of Technology and the tenured professor of architecture. Her leadership advances design innovation, intellectual diversity, and merging computational technology and interdisciplinary programs. There is much more to say about the impact of her research, but I would like to leave the floor to her so that you can, Maria, introduce the book appropriately. I leave the stage to you, Maria.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Alessandro, for your kind introduction and for putting together this important event tonight. And I would like to express my friendship and my greetings to Mayor Macelloni for the important message that was reaching out to several points that are absolutely important for us to hear today. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you and my colleagues Maurizio Carta and Antonio Lara Hernandez, editors with me of the Resilient Communities book, and the numerous authors participating in our events from all over the world. I know we have a great presence tonight. We will give you a comprehensive overview of the content and the meaningful purpose of this publication, reaching more than 270 pages, bringing together collective efforts to stimulate exchanges between forward thinkers, public and private sector innovators, academics, researchers, scientists, and professional experts on sustainable strategies for urban, social, and environmental resilience. The work informing the book and the Peccioli Charter document, in my opinion, this is what I'm thinking, is validated as the theoretical framework for the Italian Pavilion, Resilient Communities, of the 17th Architecture Venice Biennale, curated by our New York Tech endowed chair, Alessandro Melis. And I want to congratulate Alessandro for the amazing pavilion that he put together. Our school's exhibition correlated resiliencies in the section Architecture as Caregiver at the Venice Biennale that I co-curated with Antonino Di Oraimo, and I know Antonino is here today, feature faculty and student works on community engaged projects, urban adaptation and sustainable growth, unfolding the intersections for design innovation while emerging and performative technologies contribute to new strategies. Design is about life, has social connotations, influences our cultures, and a critical design sensitivity can help us to be more accountable. Design innovation can frame environmental challenges and climate change emergencies, activate new forms of urban ecologies, envisioning sustainable densities and infrastructures, and open up new research trajectories. This time of fast-changing scenarios and challenges presents opportunities for interdisciplinary collaborations, a more intentional approach to civic engagement, responsible practices, and efforts to facilitate access to equitable spaces and resources. We can catalyze far-reaching change by prioritizing actionable plans for the regeneration and health of our communities where diverse voices are included and represented. And my contribution to the book is from the perspective of an educator and not just a professional and a researcher. As educators, and we are all contributing to that tonight, because this is also an event for our students in so many universities participating. We must be seriously invested in remarking the cultural presence of architecture and design, facilitating the identification of urgent questions like diverse representation, social justice, affordable housing, services and healthcare for vulnerable populations, as those are influenced by pre-existing built context and urban and environmental conditions, while contributing to achieving climate goals and building more human, diverse, and healthier societies. I like to think that this book is critically remarking the important momentum for our agencies to build collaborative synergies, enact unavoidable measures, and frame sustainable strategies and tangible interventions for the reimagination of our cities. This is what we try to put together in this book. But going more in details about the content, I would like to give the word back to Alessandro and introduce, I believe, Maurizio. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. Very inspiring. Also, in this case, a lot to say. Yes, I would like to introduce Maurizio. Maurizio Carta is an architect and full professor of urbanism and regional planning at the Department of Architecture and academic senator of the University of Palermo, founder and director of the Augmented City Lab, an international research agency about the cities of the future. I would like to highlight in this context that Maurizio was the coordinator of the steering committee for the Resilient Communities Charter. So he has been starting together with us and all the members of the steering committee to work on this project since the early 2019. Maurizio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandro, and thanks for the organization of this vibrant initiative. And good morning, good afternoon to the American friends, good night to the Italian friends, and good morning to the New Zealand friends that we are all collected in this occasion. Many thanks to Maria, with whom I share the opportunity, the privilege to edit this book, and a special thanks to Antonio Hernandez for his huge works for the birth of this book. He is the real father of this book, because his activity was fundamental for the editing of the book, for the collecting of all the contribution. Thank you so much, Antonio.
Thank you.
Now I will share my screen for a few reflection about the books. This is the topic of my reflection, the needs. This is the title of the introduction of the front matter of the books, the need to build, to imagine and to build an anti-fragile augmented community. So this is our book, this is the cover, this is our brilliant cover of the end, and this is a sort of manifesto of our common resilient communities, because this book is indeed a resilient community is a framework of a resilient community of people. This is the index of the context, the table of the content is the very huge framework of different kind of contribution from different experience, from different schools of architecture, design, technologies, from the professional field to the academic field. For us, it was a very privilege to be with this perfect community. And this is my scheme about the conceptual scheme of the book, because the book is composed by 4 fields: the field of principles, the field of vision, the field of practices, and the field of methodologies, combined each other in several different kinds and connected by the connection and the cross-reference, because the book has deepened the several cross-connection between the several authors. And another thing of connection are the 10 articles of the Peccioli Charter that cross all over the book, and the drawings. Alessandro Melis had a brilliant ideas to use the drawing as another language of the books, not only words, not only project, not only design, but only drawings, the ability of visual art to synthesize very complex concept. And this is our book. Our book is a vital organism, is an organism that change in relation with the several kind of reader, not only of the several kind of writer. And the book is based on this statement: the need to pursue the metamorphosis of the world, because we need a radical vision about the future. And this is our common radical vision that Alessandro perfectly established in the Italian pavilion, that is the heart, is the brain of the book. This book is one of the collection of the books, of the catalogs of the pavilion. And I think that through the books you can find three revolutions for a radical ecology. The first, the revolution of the words, and the first word we want to revolution is Anthropocene. Anthropocene perhaps is a neutral terms. We prefer Anthropocalypse because we are living in a collapse of the humanity, not only in another kind of geological era. We are living through apocalypse of the humanity and the relation of the humanity with the planet, with the other species, with our cities, with our land. This is the evidence. The Earth is a multi-species planet, and we are not the most relevant. And this is one of the most important consideration of the book. But in front of the entire biomass of the Earth, in 2020, the humanity has produced more anthropogenic mass than the biomass. Is not supportable. Is an imbalance. Is an imbalance. We have to act on this imbalance. It's impossible to stay in this condition of unsustainable imbalance between biomass of the planet and anthropogenic mass. The second revolution is the revolution of cities and communities, of course, and this is the argument of my introduction. And I propose in other books, but also in these books, the augmented city as one of the possible solutions for the revolution of cities and communities. Cities more sentient, more collaborative, intelligent, productive, creative, recyclable, resilient, fluid, reticular, and strategic. So I think we need a new evolutionary leap, not only for cities and communities, but I propose for humanity. And this is, I use this important occasion to show the cover of my next book about Homo urbanus, the need to a new evolution leap of the humanity, able to improve a new symbiotic relation with the planet. The third revolution is the revolution of the resilience. And for me, one of the best metaphor for resilience is the mangrovia, because I think that the hybrid condition of the mangrovia are a perfect analogies for the resilient community. So I think that augmented city, augmented land are like mangroves, able to cross several scales, several levels, several conditions, fight the traditional conflict between local and global, physical and digital, public and private, air and underground, open and closed, domestic, urban, urban and rural, mineral and vegetable, formal, informal, waste and recycle. This is one of the proposal, the city of the augmented proximity that is able to act as a mangrove, able to live in different condition, and to adapt itself to different conditions we need. Of course, the backbone of the book is the Peccioli Charter, that is for us is a through new constitution for Italy, for Italian resilient communities, but we think also for the international resilient community, a new constitution of the earth, according to Luigi Ferrara. These are the 10 articles of the Peccioli Charter: promote innovation, reimagine cities and life space, be sensitive and effective, stimulate the circular metabolism, be smart and anti-fragile, spread knowledge, generate value, design interfaces, sharing space, and be polycentric. Last word, please. no more master plan. It's impossible that the revolution of the resilient communities could be based on the traditional master plan, assertive, regulative, conformative. It's no more effective on the ground. So we imagine a new kind of urbanism, a sort of exaptive urbanism based on creativity, functional cooptation, and evolutive lab. This is the scheme, but you know, I think that a lot of this revolution, index of revolution, and prototype of solution could be found in this our magnificent book. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Now I would like to leave the floor to Jose Antonio Hernandez, architect, PhD. He is head of Department of Urban Resilience Research at the Institute of Mobility and Urban Territorial Development in Yucatan. And he crossed the oceans for Pacific and Atlantic Ocean together with me. So I'm particularly grateful to Antonio for all the experience we share together. Antonio, the floor is yours. Please stay.
Thanks, Alessandro. It's fine. First of all, I want to thank to Alessandro, because as he said, we met in New Zealand and we have crossed the whole globe, then in England, and then now in the US, and well, now I'm in Italy and Porto. And I would like to say thank you to the other editors, to Maurizio, to Maria. Thank you, guys. Finally, it's here after these 2 years and COVID and all the lockdowns. Finally, we are here. We did it. Thanks to the mayor, Peccioli, and thanks to all the contributors. I would like to say a special thanks to all the staff at the New York Institute of Technology that made this possible. And I would like to say some few words about our book, which, by the way, is now you can pre-order, is on the production stage, so it will be out within two weeks max. Then our book, as my colleagues already mentioned, and also Alessandro did, but I also want to underline it, is global. We have collaborations from every continent except, of course, Antarctica. The book is timely, given the global crisis in terms of environmental, social, and economic. Is timely. It gives reflections, thoughts, and ideas that probably will change the way how we can see the role of architecture and what we from our corner we can do. The book is inclusive because it has given voice to a wide range of people, starting from the professional, academicians, public sector, institution, and of course, I mean, people from different parts of the world, students, professors, etc. The book is a statement of a non-linear thinking. We are facing very complex problems, and we need to have a non-linear thinking. We know that the word after COVID that was on trend was resilience here and resilience there, and everybody was an expert on resilience. The truth is that we are still crawling like a baby to really conceptualize and to understand how this works. So this book is an attempt that push further this non-linear thinking. Is cross-disciplinary. So we already said, these perspectives and these views from different people with different abilities, different skills, and different cosmovision of the world. We need that diversity for these complex problems that we are facing. I just want to finish saying that the book has been taken as the guidelines for the government in Campeche in Mexico. We have been working very close with them. And with this, I just want to say thank you, and we are very happy. Thanks for the contributors that are here with us. And for the others, we will see them in the next, in the second part of the launch of this book. Thank you, and enjoy the lecture. Thanks, Ale.
Thank you, Antonio. I could not agree more with many of the things that you said, but for not wasting time of our distinguished speakers, I would like to leave the microphone to Maurizio, who was kindly accepted to moderate, to introduce, and our, as I said, distinguished and I would say precious contributors of this book.
Thanks, Alessandro. I'm very happy to introduce the first two speakers, Angioletta Voghera from the Polytechnic University of Turin and Fabrizio Aimar, Universiteti Polis. Angioletta Voghera is full professor of Urban and Regional Planning in the University Department of Urban and Regional Studies and Planning at Polytechnic University of Turin. She is a PhD in Spatial Planning and Local Development. She's the coordinator of the Master of Science level in Territorial, Urban, Environmental and Landscape Planning since 2021, and Vice Coordinator of the second level Master in Methods and Techniques for the Governance of Resilient Territories toward Integrated Risk Management since 2021. Her main research activities are in the field of regional landscape and protected areas planning and urban design concerning European context. Fabrizio Aimar is an architect, PhD with honors in urban and regional development program at the Polytechnic University of Turin. Since October 2021, Fabrizio is a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture and Design, Polis University Tirana, Albania. He was a member of the advisory board of the Italian Pavilion at the 17th International Architecture Exhibition in Venice, entitled Resilient Community, of course. Moreover, Fabrizio has been a juror for National Architecture and Architectural Criticism Awards, including one organized by INARC covering Sicily and Calabria. The floor is yours.
Thank you to the editors and to Alessandro for the invitation to this book presentation. Our research is related to the topic of landscape resilience in relation to design and to planning, and is trying to stress the central role of communities. Landscape resilience is a paradigm, is an interdisciplinary research topic, and it is still open in literature. In the debate, resilience approach seems to be related to the concept of strong sustainability, which requires flexibility, integration and community empowerment to face all of the crises, of all the territorial crises, and also to promote ecological transition. Resilience so can be an useful lens to interpret the transformative action in the territory and the landscape, trying to seek a balance through conservation and development. So on one end, each landscape design for resilience should be multiple, dynamic, and coevolutionary, and capable of maintaining the robustness and also the identity of a landscape, its function and structure, and in the adaptation processes to transformations. On other hand, in urban territorial design, resilience intervention are characterized by an ecological landscape approach. So this landscape approach is focused on community engagement and is characterized by a place-related and people-centered approach to promote an active conservation. So we are trying to discuss which are common features of resilience approach and in relation to landscape planning and in relation to landscape design. The contribution in the book by me and Fabrizio will focus on the polysemic concept of landscape resilience, and we are discussing the role of planning and also of the design at different territorial scales for resilience. I leave the floor to Fabrizio that can share our presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Angeletta. Thank you for introducing me and also our research. And also, but first of all, let me thank Alessandro Melis for chairing this event and Maurizio to introduce us. So just to provide a quick presentation, this is the theoretical background about my research. Our research actually is made about, how can I say, to try to define a path for defining landscape resilience. So we see that in literature, the relationships between resilience and sustainability are, it seems, quite defined in the sense that resilience can be defined as a subset of sustainable science, and also a renewed system approach to sustainable science. It seems also related to the concept of strong sustainability, which requires flexibility, integration, and empowerment, among other attributes. So resilience can be interpreted as a useful lens to detect, to understand the transformative actions to which the territory and landscape are subject, seeking transitional stability through different projects. So, when we made actually this literature review, we find some research gaps. First of all, we define that the concept of landscape resilience is not present in the literature, so we can say that it is a research frontier, and also is a polysemic research hypothesis, as Angeletta said before, especially for the fact that regarding to the landscape. Although the National Strategy for Adaptation to Climate Change mentioned the need to use landscape plans as an adaptation tool, the current vast-scale landscape approach does not seem appropriate for building resilience. So we need general actions to be transformed into local design ones in order to really consider the community aspiration. So we also find that the landscape plan is an effective tool when considering the scale of local changes and projects. So the focus should be on the territorial governance and the involvement of social actors. Two research questions come to our mind. What role should be assigned to landscape planning in light of these remarks? Is the current approach to urban planning correct in producing landscape resilience? So we find some implication for integrated management system, and a resilience-oriented approach should be put a priority focus on places and community empowerment, should act on the local scale, should pay attention to biodiversity, historical remains, and community, and also should focus on community contribution as a proactive landscape management. So what does it mean building the resilience of ordinary landscape? So there are some features that should be considered. The complexity of landscape features, a biocultural diversity, the identity factors by the local community, a living heritage approach, a site-specific but place-related approach, a community-based and individual-centered approach, an individual and community-based well-being, slow burns as the climate change, as Maurizio said before, and the fast change variables like systemic shocks with respect to community needs, social economic vulnerabilities, traditional plus cutting-edge management methods and techniques, and empowerment local people. So as Angeletta said, moving from the European Landscape Convention and its definition and defining multiple landscape approach to planning and design, from vast landscape land to local and architectural design, we come to a potential definition of landscape resilience that is centered on community-based approach. So people-oriented design plus place-related design. They should consider ecological, economical, social, aesthetic, and territorial perspective combined with strategic and regulatory perspectives. So we provide 3 insights that we consider relevant in order to try to define the landscape resilience. So landscape resilience means that the landscape and its features can maintain its identity and succeed in guaranteeing the quality of life through a holistic approach that bases this transformation also on the manifestation of a perspective character. Also, landscape resilience does not mean that adaptation can be achieved in any way, but that adaptation actions have to follow the people aspiration. And thus, landscape resilience is the process of transforming and designing the landscape to improve its quality, addressing the needs of resilience, adaptation, and risk control, by putting the people aspiration at the heart of the debate. So, just to come into the end, about the theory revised, resilience can be equated with a new value in managing ordinary landscape. And also the territorial and the ordinary landscape related dynamics are comparable to a socio-ecological system. So interrelate the concepts of co-evolutionary resilience and landscape it seems necessary. And local population are the only ones able to understand the territorial needs and activate effective responses in managing ordinary and preserved landscapes. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Angeletta and Fabrizio, for your very crucial stepping stone in our initiative. Next speaker is Daniela Perotti, University of Louvain. Daniela Perotti is Professor of Landscape Theory and Practice at the University of Louvain. Here, she leads the Urban Metabolism Lab, an interdisciplinary research team working on advanced spatially and temporally dynamic modeling of urban resource, demand at the crossroad of landscape and urban planning in design, urban ecology, social ecology, environmental engineering, data science, philosophy of science. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maurizio, for the introduction. Thank you also goes to you, Maria and Antonio, for all the steering and the coordination for the book. And a special thank, of course, to Alessandro for making all this possible and all the nice discussions and talks we had in the last years towards the preparation of the Peccioli Charter, to which I had the opportunity to contribute, and I'm really happy that we had this opportunity today, even only virtually, to put again the Peccioli family together. So thank you very much for making this possible again. In these few years, actually, since we started this whole journey into the resilient communities, steering and talking, I was aiming and contributing in particular to the discussion of the steering group and the Peccioli Charter through this idea of metabolism, right? So this idea that cities might have, according to some people, me among others, a metabolism. Cities have metabolisms exactly or in almost in the same ways as organisms and human bodies have metabolisms. So I was actually trying to understand in all this discussion, so how all this research that has been, lately done around this concept of metabolism of cities can contribute to this very, very complex concept of resilience, as also Antonio mentioned. We are baby crawling, that's exactly the thing. We're baby crawling. There is so much still to learn about resilience and to understand about resilience. So how can research into urban metabolism contributes towards that. And there's a particular, as also Maurizio was mentioning, there is a particular article in the Peccioli Charter which is actually trying to delve into that. The fourth article stimulates the circular metabolism. So it's already great that we had the opportunity to have one article really devoted to this idea of the metabolism of resilience communities. And as all this kind of multi-layered concept, also metabolism of cities or urban metabolism as a quite complex definition, but the one that normally the scientific communities embrace is the idea that metabolism is the total sum of the socioeconomic and biophysical processes that occur in city and which kind of induce the assimilation of energy and material, the elimination of waste, but also the growth of the city itself. And as many people that have learned and get acquainted with the metabolism idea through urban ecology, I'm also very happy to show this image of this diagram, one of the first diagram actually of the attempt to represent urban metabolism in a visual done by Paul Duvigneau and colleagues back in the 70s. So it's really one of the milestone in urban metabolism thinking, because it's the idea that city metabolism, these things can also go beyond technical flows, but also includes biophysical flows and natural resources like the sun and the wind and biomass, human biomass and animal biomass in general. So that's my that was the kind of contribution. And also in the book there is the idea that I wanted to push forward is, okay, how can we study basically the metabolism of resilience community? And I put forward this idea that we could work across 4 different steps. And the first was in the first slide. The first is measuring, then mapping and making. So measuring, a very simple example I'm going to provide for each of these keywords in this slide. So measuring. This was an initiative that was run by the Brussels region quite lately, trying to understand, okay, how much phosphorus actually do we produce in Brussels? So what is actually the actual cycle of phosphorus in Brussels? And how can this idea of measuring how much phosphorus is actually produced through the food chain in Brussels, how can this idea make some community-based activities possible? So how can enhanced understanding of phosphorus cycles and the measuring of phosphorus cycle can actually provide us opportunities to design compost communities, compost neighborhood. That's the way they name it here in Brussels. So how can we actually know more and get into this idea that the understanding and measuring metabolism can go into can favor community practice. So this for me is an example of measuring resilience community in terms of their metabolism. Okay, so how much phosphorus we consume, how much it goes into in our compost, and how much we can produce locally through that compost. Okay, mapping is also for me a very quite important aspect. Also, when we are looking into how to use this idea of metabolism to understand the resilience of resilience communities. So this is a work we have been undertaking in the last few months with a PhD students of mine in our urban metabolism lab, which we were trying to say, okay, there is a lot of data gathering and data analysis in the urban metabolism. So, but this data are not always spatialized. So how can we actually, what the effect of spatialized data, which is not always easy and straightforward, can, tell us about the distribution of resources and how resilient finally the communities that are located within cities are. And this is an example we were, working towards in the city of Mexico, and of course one of the most interesting challenge that city of Mexico was putting forward was this idea of informality. That is another interesting topic we also had the chance to work on with Alessandro and other also speakers today, Antonino in particular. So how is actually the fact that we can map the flows and stocks, how can actually help to understand how resilient are vulnerable communities and sometimes also informal communities, which we are not definitely the same. So the mapping is also another step forward that, you know, in terms of research, it's very important to undertake, although with all the difficulties that we have in terms of data management and lacks, etc., etc. And finally, and this is, you know, the kind of last idea I would like to finish off, is the idea of making. The fact that we do research on the metabolism, we measure, we map, doesn't make us, let's say, distant and not supposed to make things happen or make things manually. And that's a summer school we ran 2 years ago now already, with a group of students from our university and other universities in Belgium, Leuven, and we actually were, you know, working on the idea of soil as a resource. So this idea of this new policy, non-net land take, that has been undertaken from the European Commission back in the 2011, and then the idea is to reach zero land net take to 2050. So it's a very ambitious challenge that the European community is taking over. So how can we actually make things happen? How can we actually realize what the metabolism of a community can be when we actually do stuff like desealing, like contributing towards this zero net, no net land take aspect and target that the European Commission has. So, and this was really a very important learning outcomes that I had finally working with the students and doing actually some desealing tests. So go there and take some, because the soil is a resource, so take some paving out to understand, you know, what does it make to take the paved cities? How does the fact that we can recycle soil can look like and make it actually happen, I mean, even manually with the students. So it was an amazing opportunity. And again, mapping, the 3M mapping and measuring, mapping and making are definitely 3 possible way forwards to understand how all this metabolism research can contribute to our resilient communities understanding. Thank you very much, and yeah, hope to look forward to the next step.
Thanks, Daniela, for your contribution now and for your important contribution in the steering committee to edit the Peccioli Charter. Thank you so much. Now, the next speaker is Professor Richie, my brothers in arms. Richie is Emeritus of Italian Republic of Art and Culture since 2003. He's an Italian architect and urbanist. His research examines the relation between landscape, contemporary urbanism, and architecture, and concern ecological performing project, recycle, resilient, sensitive landscape, design, and ecological urbanism. He is author, editor, or co-editor of numerous books on these subjects, and his writing has been published and translated internationally. He is full professor of architectural design and urbanism, and he is the chair of architectural design studio at the University of Trento. Mosè, please, thanks. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maurizio, and thanks to Maria, Antonio, and Alessandro for inviting me in the book and also here. Ciao, everybody. And okay, my chapter is about, the title is Periphery Does Not Exist, and about the need to be radical in architecture. It's about the role of design to enable resilient processes in our city landscapes and so on. But I don't want to spoil the chapter content before the book is out tonight, and I prefer to tell you a story. I can share the screen probably. And this is the story of a project we did with Consuelo Nava and Aldo Emonino for the Italian pavilion in the Expo in Milan in 2015. I mean, not so far from now, and after the economical crisis, after the ecological, have a competence, I would say, of the designers and so on. If you remember, the Expo Milan was about the food, and the first sketches of Stefano Boeri and Rem Koolhaas and Thomas Herzog were about providing for the Expo in Ireland with greenhouses and very light pavilions to remove and to create a park of an international park of food in Milan. But the real master plan then was like a new city. I mean, the classical master plan of the expansion of a city, like every big event provides everywhere in the world. So very traditional. And the Italian pavilion was something like Palazzo Farnese. I mean, the dimension of the pavilion they wanted was the dimension of Palazzo Farnese. So we propose a concept for this pavilion that interprets the program at the contrary. In the contrary, we dig instead of building, and the concept was the cloud, that, as you know, means a piece of ground, but also can be used like a piece of something else. I mean, a piece of shit, for example, like a provocation to the brief. And the pavilion was a sort of underground shelter that you can use after the expo for mushroom farms or for putting, you know, the cars for maintenance of a park, something like that. And the only emerging thing was a landscape to represent Italy, and some strange devices that were like sails in the landscape. And they were solar panel, dew traps, and also screens where you can project the images of Italian presence in the food scene and the Italian culture. And so this was the pavilion, a landscape with images, with communication, something that was able to share the content with the participants, with the people that go to the expo, something that is able to perform ecologically, and something that is able to make a narrative about the Italian contribution to the expo. At the end, we were excluded. We were, excluded from the judgment by the technical secretary, only because we didn't interpret the brief, and they built this building. This is what I wrote about in the book, about the need to be radical, to propose. I know nobody knows that. I mean, we can only share the radical project among us, but I hope that this can change the culture of incrementalism that in the Western country is dominating in this time, and the need to assume new paradigms like sharing, social action, performing or narrating through our building designs or city design or landscape design, and always, considering the need of circular projects that can be recycled and at the end of their cycle. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mosè, for your contribution. Very, very amazing project. I knew, but is always important to listen your exposition. And now the next speaker is my colleague of the steering committee of the Peccioli Charter, Katia Cossato. Katia Cossato is a Swiss-Italian architect and owner of ACT Architecture in Chiasso, Switzerland, from 2013, adjunct professor for architectural design at the Polytechnic of Milan. After her doctoral degree, she taught at the Polytechnic in Zurich, the Academy of Architecture in Mendrisio, and in the School of Architecture of Vaduz. She published in Italian and Foreign Architecture magazine, and she was editor of the Swiss Archi. With her office, she won several prizes in architectural competition, and she is engaged in urban regeneration project. She was a consultant for the regulatory plan of Tirana in Albania. Katia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this invitation of the New York Institute of Technology, of Alessandro, Maria, Maurizio, Jose Antonio, and all the team. It's really nice to be with you this evening. I would like to share some picture about two places, a city and a town, and I will speak about the role of artists and architects in building the space of a resilient community. Among the many pioneers of who had worked with the participatory processes, I would like to remember in Italy Carlo Doglio. Carlo Doglio, who at the beginning of the 50s in the last century revisited the thought of Kropotkin on the Manford in an anarchic style. He was one of the inspirators in post-war urban planning in Italy, reminds us of the free and very active life of the medieval city in Italy. The architecture of these communities was a sort of social art shared by the community, which saw the first crisis precisely when it no longer extended the principle of mutual support of the association and federations to all the citizens, and did not take sufficient care of agriculture, for example. Doglio's social art focuses on the idea of an integrated community with a clear naturalistic vision of the organization of the settlement unit. So I think social art and social sculpture, unexpected links to this can be glimpsed in one of the most significant artists of the second half of the last century, Joseph Beuys. The phrase reforesting the city instead of administering the city plays with the similarity of two words in German, Stadtverwaltung, Stadtverwaltung. They're really similar. The operation presented by the artist in the unforgettable Documenta 7 was revolutionary, the sustainable exhibition of Castle 1982. A great gesture that of Beuys, which anticipates the issues that are current today, the intuition behind a vast urban transformation in systems landscape project carried out with the active participations of citizens. 7,000 oaks were planted from that time until the artist's death, which occurred a few years later. Everybody knows this story. At the base of this operation, motivated by the desire to reawaken the awareness of environmental protection, there was the idea of making a gesture to all of the people who wanted to collaborate in the reforestation of the city of Kassel, and we were at the beginning of the 80s. The multiplication of this individual action over time, associating a slab of basalt stone at the time of planting the tree at a specific point in the city, produced the final sculpture, the final social sculpture, the sum of many acts, each of which could be assimilated to a sort of sacred rite. The basalt slabs initially accumulated in front of the Federiciano Museum gradually decreased in volume, modifying the appearance of the square, the form of the square. And every planted oak bore the name of the buyer, people that could not acquire more than one of these basalts, of these stones. Here we see boys at work, and this is, we know, everybody, the final act of the project. So the city of Kassel had a transformation with this association with the stone and with the plants and this new boulevard in the city. In the same period that Beuys founded the FIU in Düsseldorf as a free international university for creativity and interdisciplinary research, also his relationship with Italy was consolidated. The Italy villages and small and medium cities, defense of nature was the operation carried out by the German master in the region Abruzzo, you know, from 1972 to 1985. Again, a project that needs time to be developed and that still is going on. And specifically in the small town of Bolognano, these pictures are showing this place through the active involvement of people from all over the world, sharing the fundamental themes of unity in diversity, living sculpture, and respect of Mother Nature. These were the titles of these performances. According to the directives of Joseph Beuys, species of trees and shrubs in danger of extinctions, mostly due to the economic and the commercial problems, have been planted in the 15 hectares of Baron Durini's farm in the region Abruzzo. Here you see Joseph Beuys in this incredible nice place at work, and here with the historian and wife of Barone Durini. Also, these pictures are coming from the archive of these two persons. Experiencing the elements of nature helps to recognize the interdependence of everything, body, architecture, and the nature, and to consider the environment as a unique. The deeper this experience, the more body's relationship with the environment is investigated, and the more respect for nature increases. Projecting the microcosm into the macrocosm and sharing the effect of this action at the community scale consolidate the feeling of being part of the life cycles that surround us. To act in this direction and to be able to properly inform a resilient community, we probably have to turn to the theories of perception in history. This is a big and important tradition that we can use to understand better our environment. It's a question of sensibility. It's a question of to have the sense of the place. If the most important characteristic of a resilient community is to maintain its peculiar and recognizable constituents, features, adapting to inevitable changes over time, we believe that a renewed relationship with nature is at the base of every good territorial planning approach, including often marginal territories and borders. Artists and architects could be more involved in these operations. Indeed, they could propose and guide them, a sort of art hosting. So I believe that the idea, and at the end, of a resilient community can be extended to those communities, to all these communities which despite not having to deal with a traumatic event or an emergency, are dangerously dull, exhausted, and a little dormant, and therefore threatened by lack of initiatives capable of facing the economic crisis and the social changes. Or those territories that risk dying slowly, like because they are polluted, because of the degradation, because they are abandoned. So I'm concluding saying that I think that against short-term events, typical of the specularization of architectural and natural spaces in the great national and international exhibition, for example, of sporting events, of tourism and of economic, we propose a non-event space, aware of the long-term consequences, not the short terms, the long-term consequences of human actions, and an expression of the intelligence of the place, an intelligence of the place that we have to discover again, and in this sense, resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katia. Now, next speaker is Luisa Bravo, colleagues of the steering committee of the Peccioli Charter. Luisa Bravo is a global academy scholar and educator, cultural entrepreneur, and public space activist. She has more than 15 years experience in the professional field as urban planner and designer with a specific focus on public space. Her expertise is grounded in extensive academic postdoctoral research and teaching in Italy and Europe. She is currently adjunct professor in urban design at the University of Florence School of Humanities and Education. Luisa is the founder and president of City Space Architecture, an Italian non-profit organization promoting public space culture, and she's the founder and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Public Space. Luisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maurizio. And thank you, Alessandro and the New York Institute of Technology for the projects, also in cooperation with the UN Habitat on public space and rethinking the public space from the human perspective. So I'm interested actually to define here a perspective on human capital in relation to resilient communities. So according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, human capital is the set of knowledge, skills, competencies, and attributes embodied in individuals that facilitate the creation of personal, social, and economic well-being. So at the Italian Pavilion, we talked about resilient communities, and communities are made of individuals, and collectively they define the human capital. And human capital is also used as an indicator to also in reference of UN Human Development Index and also the Better Life Index. And the reference to the human capital is not new, actually, because there is a large discussion on the human capital going back to the famous speech from Robert Kennedy in 1968, where he actually stated that the GDP measures everything except what makes life truly worth living. And the idea that we need to stress the importance of the value of the community and the sense of belonging to community rather than accumulation and you know, the reference to capitalism approaches. And I like also very much to go back to this statement made by Kristalina Georgieva during her period as World Bank CEO. And during this annual investment fund meeting, she actually said it was a shock because we discovered that 2/3 of the wealth of our planet is us. And this was stated when they launched the Human Capital Project. She says it is people, and richer country would have a higher share of human capital in its wealth, and a poorer country would have a smaller share. This is also very much aligned with the domains of change work promoted by UN Habitat. So those are the 4 pillars actually related to sustainable development. And you see that, of course, there is resilience related to climate action, but also it's very much related to people and how they are part of the equation in terms of policies and frameworks also that are now part of the flagship programs of UN Habitat. So if we talk about resilient communities and we talk about human capital, we can see that we are touching several parts, the majority of the flagship programs of UN Habitat, and also the fact that we have to redefine the approach to people also in regard of smart cities, with the people-centered smart cities, or in terms of inclusion, so enhancing the positive impact of urban migration, and also in terms of resilient settlements and vibrant neighborhoods and communities. Also in Italy, the Italian National Institute of Statistics in 2013 developed this multidimensional approach for the definition of a methodology that was able to measure development as fair and sustainable well-being. And I like to refer also to these 2 recent publications from UN Habitat, where they stress the importance of a citywide public space strategies for sustainable development. And I think this is very much aligned with this idea of developing a methodology for sustainable well-being that is dealing with individuals and communities. And I want to conclude with this statement also by Irina Bokova, UNESCO Director General. She is, fostering and pushing for a new humanism, which is theoretical but above all practical, so that we do not just search for values, but we also work on implementation of concrete programs that have tangible results. And since we are in New York, even if virtually, I like to conclude with this image from yoga at Times Square, which is, sorry for the typo, which is related also to the article of the Charter, Reimagining the City and its Spaces for Public Life. And this is my contribution actually to the Charter.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you very much. Your contribution is very fundamental to extend the spectrum of the book, of the meaning of resilient communities. Next speaker is Antonino Di Raimo. Antonino Di Raimo is a PhD, is a reader in architecture at the PSA School of Architecture, where he is also research co-lead. He joined the University of Portsmouth in 2017. At Polish University, Antonino has also been the head and founder of the Innovation Factory Research Unit, a pioneering institute aimed at unraveling the role of innovation within the unique Albanian reality. In 2021, he was the correspondent editor of the book Informality Through Sustainability, along with Alessandro Melis and Stefan Lehmann. Antonino, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good night, because here is, well, 12:24. So good evening, good night, and maybe good morning to some friends from New Zealand. Hi, Antonio. I would say in 8 minutes, of course, let me thank all the team, Alessandro, Maria, Antonio, and Maurizio. And now I'm going to share my screen for my quick presentation. I will stay in 8 minutes. So, okay, can you see my screen? Is that fine? Good. So I'm talking a little bit about a research project that we are developing here in Portsmouth. And the article published in your book is really one of the components of this project. Well, the title of this article, as some of you might know, is Why Resilient Communities Need Trauma-Informed Care, the case for trauma-informed design for resilient cities. And this research indeed is about the concept of trauma-informed design, which is a relatively new notion, maybe more popular in the Anglo-Saxon reality. We have some example in the UK and in the US, but I would also say quite unknown field in Italy, for instance. It's an interesting notion, and we, since the beginning, we thought as a research team that this could match very well with the word resilient, that, as many of us knows, is a word that is quite critical, and that's why it's interesting. And I think the courage of Alessandro was exactly trying also to use new word, also to uncover what has not been yet discovered and articulated, as also many other speakers have been said. Very quickly, this is my research team. Unfortunately, Madeleine couldn't join us because of childcare. So I'm working, it's an interdisciplinary team. I'm working basically with 2 criminologists. So we are also trying to set up, to establish an and in some cases transdisciplinary network. Madeleine is an expert in resistance from a gender responsive point of view, and of course from a trauma-informed perspective, while Megan is expert in delivery of alcohol treatment, probation, and cultures in the criminal justice system. And I am an architect. As Maurizio said, my interest is basically in human body architecture, disruptive technologies, and in the mixing between art, humanities, science, and technology. So basically this story started just before the lockdown. So we already started our research. So for us, the participation to the area architecture as caregiver that I have been coordinating with Maria was also the opportunity, among many other stuff in our area, to present a fragment of this research in the form of architecture manifesto. Why the architecture manifesto? Because we are architects and we do believe that our main medium to communicate, especially pioneeristic research, is exactly using architectural drawings, tests, and so on. That's why the architectural manifesto for us was also a political action to be consistent with the idea of resilient community. Very quickly, what is the main underpinning question of our research is basically how to externalize and frame properly the concept of TID, trauma-informed design, as a novel, so something new, something that can be beneficial in terms of exploration. We need to find the new words, we need to find new tools, but also a beneficial notion for architectural design. And the state of the art, very quickly, is that there are not too many implemented works, with some exception that we mentioned in our article. There is no proper acknowledged methodology, rather there is a milieu of beliefs and experience. And very, very interesting why this notion of trauma-informed design has been explored in forensic studies, for instance, in criminology and in healthcare, where it's called exactly trauma-informed care. It is still an unexplored topic in architecture and urban studies. And our research methodology, of course, being architects and social scientists, I would say, is a mix of quantitative, qualitative research. So we are using mixed methods, but I would say that from my point of view, our main methodology is artography. As you know, artography is a method which doesn't follow any research plan. I think someone was emphasizing the need of non-linear thinking. Well, I think that today more than ever, there is a big need of non-linear thinking in architecture. So we don't do research according to a plan. Rather, we are trying to establish a system of practices in order to inquire and enact new knowledge. And all of this work, exactly because of the lockdown, was also a form of collective auto-ethnographies. Where we are now, basically all the work that we presented in Venice, and from that work the article has been generated, is using a lived experience. So we were basically referring to a real story. The person is called Lynn. Nevertheless, Lynn is a fictional name. This person was at the center of a huge piece of research developed by Madeleine. And all the idea is going through the story of this person and then using architectural transcription in order to externalize the traumatic story of Lynn, and understanding then what is not the space for healing, rather the space for trauma. We believe that an interesting investigation before designing spaces for healing is exactly trying to design the opposite by using an embodied approach. Of course, another important step has been a systematic, not generalistic literature review, and that is our component for the resilient communities. And currently we are also cooperating with a charity in the UK, and we are also planning a workshop with women who have been traumatized and they are experiencing or they have experienced prison. A little bit of theoretical aspects and beliefs for us. Of course, I come from a strong cultural continental background. So, of course, the heritage of psychoanalysis, but also some philosophical works, including some very pioneeristic work developed by Louandré Salomé, including a very important work, especially in terms of embodiment approach, like Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. And so I am just going quickly to the, this is a piece of the story that was composed by using dyadic interviews. And the idea, as I said, was exactly trying to externalize the story of Lynn by using urban and architectural cartographies of trauma. This was exactly part of our manifesto for Venice. As you see here, the emphasis is exactly trying to understand the relation of the body within the architectural space by using poses. And therefore, then we are also going to work more also regarding the involvement with local communities here in Portsmouth. We are very grateful because in this book we have also another component, as I said, which is mainly a systematic literature review. And thank you very much for listening.
I don't know if Maurizio is connected. Maurizio? Okay, Maurizio, yes, okay.
I lost the connection. Now I'm here. Well, thank you very much, Antonino. And now the next speaker is Eric Goldberg from Florida International University. Eric Goldberg is a co-founder with Veronica Zuckerberg of Monad Studio, a design research practice with focus in the creation of art installation experimental architecture, highlighting spatial perception related to rhythmic effect. Eric Goldberg is Associate Professor at Florida International University and Director of London's Architectural Association Visiting Program in Miami. He is the author of the book Pulsation in Architecture. Monad Studio's 3D printed groundbreaking art installation and sonic sculpture have been exhibited at MoMA, Venice Architecture Biennale, and Art Basel Miami, as well as performed in China, Japan, Russia, and so on. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see many of you again, and thank you so much. Thank you kindly, Maria, Antonio, and Mauricio for putting this book together. It's an amazing community. And once again, I'm really pleased to be near, at least in my heart, to Alessandro. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. I'm going to share my screen and begin this presentation. I've gone back mentally as in hearing that this would be about the Peccioli Charter in relation to the book, and I was remembering when over 2 years ago when we were in Peccioli, and for the presentation of the Italian pavilion officially, with the mayor and everybody else and many of you involved, and I was like totally stunned by these giant humans and giant heads in the middle of the landscape. The kind of angst that produced in me is indescribable. We were in this hotel in the middle of nowhere, near Peccioli, but not really in Peccioli, and then we went to the landfills and saw this amazing creature, these beautiful arts. And I like stories, you know. I'm kind of like more of a architect, artist, storyteller maybe. So I'm interested in this idea of kind of telling you the story of a project that we did with Alessandro and a great group of collaborators that sort of is the embodiment of my interests, my contribution to the book. And this is a project that we call Borboleta, playfully, because it's kind of the intersection, at the intersection of these kind of interests shared with Alessandro and our group, and the work of Carlos Santana. This is a very old album from the early 70s, actually called Borboleta. And I like to think of a borboleta as this kind of very strange, bizarre butterfly. And of course, Alessandro's interest in kind of making me aware of the work of Stephen Jay Gould, which really informed a whole project that began in 2019 with an exhibition that we did together at the Biennale in Buenos Aires, continued at Pisa, Miami, and then ultimately we did something together for Venice, where we're taking with us these ideas, this very notion of creating somehow evolutionary infrastructures, or as we call it, a sort of urban mobile living lab that would combine a series of elements that are really evocative of the kind of interest that we should be steering our attention towards. And this is what its first iteration was, presented in Buenos Aires. It was this kind of structure holding 2 biomes with all sorts of insects and crickets and a number of triggers and sort of sensors that would control the environments for their livelihood, as well as producing and triggering sounds. And this structure that we created was really thinking of producing these infrastructures for non-human living forms, in a way of displaying through these installations a kind of ethical displacement, or kind of paradox, if you will, so that in order to really be invested in architecture and in the world and its structures, we should build and design not for humans. And these were part of this installation included this slime mold that was sheeted within the windows of the structure that you saw before. And then later on, we had a chance to really evolve this project in a more ambitious scale and dimension for the Biennale. Ultimately, we built it in Miami, and it was played along with Alessandro's other structures at the pavilion. And my contribution really to the book is an article about artificial coral reef, the kind of replenishment of coastal infrastructures. And this project, midway through its creation, was also very much influenced by the kind of work we've been doing on that regard, and by the ideas of kind of cooptation in nature derived from Stephen Jay Gould, and the idea of redundancy, how according to phenotypical conditions changing and varying, certain creatures have latent features and limbs that at some point or another don't seem to have a purpose but get co-opted functionally. So we wanted to sort of create this structure that would embody not only present certain living creatures included within itself, but also embody this very notion of evolutionary infrastructures from the formal point of view. And we ended up setting up this very complicated circuit that has, again, the sensors and the actuators that would continuously take care of preserving the environmental conditions for the structures for the living components inside of structure. And we took, as always, real pleasure in emphasizing and highlighting this humane paradox by displacing the human from the center of attention of it as a user, and yet being able to include the very core of us, which is our sensate capacities, or sensible capacities. In this case, for music, as this is a kind of like strange bass guitar which finds its way within the structure. And it was played gracefully by amazing Italian soul at the Venice Biennale at the Pavilion as well. In any case, I'm very always almost feeling a certain nostalgia already for this kind of activity that found its apex, its kind of moment of expression, where all these ideas collided together. Sort of inflamed by Alessandro's passion and an amazing group of collaborators at the Biennale. So I wanted to sort of revive that today and tell myself that this is the stuff that I want to continue thinking of and building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Now, next speaker is Marcella Del Signore, my amazing friend from New York Institute of Technology. Marcella Del Signore is an architect, urbanist, educator, scholar, and the principal of Extopia, a design research practice that explores the intersection of architecture and urbanism with technology and the public, social, and cultural realm. She is an associate professor and director of the Master of Science in Architecture, Urban and Regional Design at New York Institute of Technology, School of Architecture and Design. Her research focuses on interscalar design approach that engage the notion of socio-technical system through computation, prototyping, materials, and fabricated assemblies, data-driven protocols, and adaptive environments. Marcella, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Maurizio. Also, the presentation actually is co-authored with Professor Giovanni Santamaria, who is here, and we will present Maurizio the paper, the contribution together tonight.
Okay.
I will start.
So,
yes.
Okay. Now I present Giovanni. Giovanni Santamaria from New York Institute of Technology is an architect and educator. His research focuses on landscape and ecological urbanism, which integrates architecture and urban design with political, economic, and social dynamics to understand the complex metabolism of our transforming environment. He is currently associate professor and department chair in the School of Architecture and Design at the New York Institute of Technology. He is active in lecturing, author of books and essays, and participated in several renowned exhibition and design competition, receiving prestigious awards. Giovanni, thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you, Maurizio.
Thanks again, everyone. So I want to thank Maria, Antonio, and Maurizio for editing this important book, and also Alessandro for bringing us all together tonight in this platform. I will start sharing screen. Please tell me if you could see the full screen. Yes, perfect, great. So our contribution to the resilient communities and the Peccioli Charter is titled Interscalar and Resilient Morphogenesis in Metabolic Territories. So this contribution is co-authored between myself and Professor Giovanni Santamaria. The contribution explores interscalar strategies as a methodological and design practice that can act upon the territory to foster resiliency, while leveraging on a network of interlaced parameters that emerge from the mapping and data action. This emerges from an holistic understanding of the global systems of action that characterize and connect our environments. So the contribution in particular reflects on 5 layers that explore and expand the notion of resiliency, looking at interscalarity, mapping, lending, and also an applied framework for interscalar resilient strategies. Mapping global geography as a result of multiscalar system of actions and reactions. In this type of dynamic mapping, the notion of interscalarity is introduced as an operative parameter to dissect and link the manifold scales of territorial systems, but simultaneously uncover dimensions of the locality through datascapes. These have been recognized within the ecological, economic, social, and cultural complexity of our diffuse urbanizations, referring to larger and layered space and time and dimensions. So in the contribution, we basically look at 3 different scales, from the global to the intermediate to the local scale, through data action and data mapping, and how they are instrumental to define how define a methodology for working through different scales, but also uncovering resiliency through design.
So yes, so one of the main purposes of our work and the participation to the book, which is also reflected in the academic work and research we do professionally and with our students, is to uncover those interscalar strategies and to explore kind of new methodological practices and methodology for mapping data that are seen instrumental in exploring both issues and potentials of our latent metabolic environments. If we expand on the notion of emergence as the process of becoming visible, bringing to light something that was not revealed and apparent before, we begin to envision a design process that is bottom-up and given by the sum of its parts. So it's a revealing process. So interscalar strategies do not privilege projects with a top-down vision, but rather work kind of tactically within a strategic framework, determining the mutual influence of each parameter and their inherent relationship between nature and in a synthetic and built environment in a synthetic approach. So these interscalar strategies try to understand the connections and the mutual action and reaction processes between phenomena that are economic, social, political, and what is their effect on the environment. Next. So the process of understanding the delamination of each layer as individual strata and the recombination in the compressed synthetic vision allows it to continuously work through an interscalar approach towards design, focus on design, on landing on space making. The continuous shift between the macro scale and the micro scale promotes a feedback loop in the design process where decisions and choices are continuously tested across scales and design protocols. As a result, the scenario scenarios developed are instances of the testing of a methodology that is promoting rational system, interdependency of parameters, and systemic vision of to rewrite the urban fabric.
It is important to learn how to decode and represent the complex and multi-layer system of cause and effect characterizing a place in its interscalar dimensions through a new integrative way of understanding the agency of mapping, quoting James Corner. This renewed way of mapping, specializing and critically visualizing meaningful selections of cross-related data not only focuses on statically describing the physical condition of a territory and the locations of the structural elements, but also represents the most all the dynamic interaction, visible and hidden phenomena. So this is the work that we have been developing actually with our students in our undergraduate and graduate programs, both at the MArch and also in the urban design program. So what you see here, these are instances of this process, and these are ways in which we begin to basically work with the agency of mapping to uncover what we call latent territories. The mapping process becomes particularly relevant as an integrated part of every design proposal, especially the ones operating within vulnerable contexts characterized by the transforming processes of shrinking, of fast growing, of both built and natural environments. The design approach deriving from this process of mapping becomes then itself not only indispensable tool to decode the complexity of phenomena and processes that are often hidden and layered, but also a possibility to rethink and reorganize sustainable ways for production, transformation, and distribution of items, energy, and information.
So this process of mapping, which is a kind of trying to record the global datascape and trying to understand their interconnection, leads to the definition of integrated, layered, and sustainable territorial strategies that organize and coordinate processes of remediation, reclamation, reuse, resource distribution, job and energy production within an overall working landscape aware of the systemic connection among phenomena global-wide and the replacement of the obsolete idea of a predetermined and centralized master plan, which is still located and landing in specific sensitive spots that are able to promote and to expand the effect of these processes. So a renewed approach, which is open, integrative, adaptable, dynamic, and truly experimental, rethinking structures, organizational system, and their multiple interaction will then integrate and build upon the knowledge and legacy of a consolidated tectonic and typology, liberating them from the dogma of an a prioristic definition through the deep understanding of their genealogical transforming processes, and merging technological changes within a constantly evolving humanistic dimension.
So in the last part of the contribution, actually, we apply this framework through specific projects that work on multiple scales, and that's what we call applied framework for interscalarity and resilience strategies. And so what we present in the contribution, we really look at a set of instances of interscalar strategy that really, again, both work as a methodological and instrumental media for design practice. And in this contribution are offered as a evidence to foster approaches for resiliency, while leveraging on a network of interlaced parameters that emerge from mapping, again, and data action. The instances presented are deployed in 3 scales, what we call small, medium, and large.
So if the mapping explores and connects the data at the global scale and try to understand all these economic and political dynamics, it's also trying to understand at the local, medium and local scale, different material uses, the technique of assembling, cultural attribution that will allow to create more sensitive tectonics responding to the transforming needs of land and users. So in the large scale instance, parameters are sourced from a macro global set of data that through the uncovering and mapping, as we said, of their interdependence, they can lead to specific direction for the development of the project. In a medium scale, in instance, parameters are sourced and to uncover a connection between top-down and bottom-up actions on the territory and also metropolitan scale. In the small local scale instances, parameters are sourced from small-scale set of data to demonstrate agency that are able to foster bottom-up resilient actions on the territories, capable to rebalance and reshape the individual narratives and to rewrite cultural landscapes.
So the uncovering of interscalar strategies as a methodological and design practice can act upon the territory, again, to foster resiliency. And through the instances presented is leveraged through a network of interlaced parameters that emerge from mapping and data action, oriented to define more sustainable strategies for sensitive actions. This fosters an applied knowledge that will creatively and openly lead the change towards resiliency for a more equal and sustainable future for all. We're going to conclude with a video that kind of looks at this interlaced data and start to basically provide somehow a framework for how we begin to think about design through data action. So this is part of the work that we do, especially in the urban design studios and with the students work at the undergraduate and undergraduate level. And we really see, again, mapping and data action as a beginning of understanding agendas, but also as a way to connect the way in which the design arguments and the design, let's say, proposal are developed through different scales.
So the global kind of understanding helps in identifying sensitive spots to intervene locally, and through that to expand the kind of the resilient programmatic agenda of these areas.
Thank you. So this is a small fragment, but we hope to continue to engage in future discussion about all the work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Very impressive mapping and approach. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Christian Pongratz from New York Institute of Technology. Christian is the senior advisor of the provost and professor of architecture. From 2017-2019, he was the interim dean of the School of Interdisciplinary Studies and Education. In order to facilitate the increased collaboration among New York tech disciplinary silos, he is initiating new collaborative programs and teamworks driven projects engaging people, communities, and industry. Together with Maria Pebellini in 2002, he co-founded and is a principal of Pongratz Pebellini Architects, an architectural design practice and research-oriented atelier investigating computation with material-based process. Christian, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. So let me briefly share one screen here with you. So thank you, of course, also to finalizing now this great work, and thank you to the ideators, I would say, and the editors, Alessandro Melis and Dean Pebellini and Antonio and also Maya Macelloni, and also the other editors and contributors. I think that the ideas in our contribution here, I would say, are an emerging part of research and collaboration with my friend and colleague, Chris Lower, and the result also now in influencing our teaching here at New York Institute of Technology. In particular, I would say we reach out to other schools and departments. Some of those are the medical school, population health, psychology, social and behavioral sciences that we see are more and more important. In the document we share in this new publication, I would say we describe an approach that we call design plus health. And it sits somewhere under the larger umbrella, I would call it the open city, of course, an inclusive city and maybe even a more equitable city. And in that sense, we think it could be one way. We heard many today about how to go about resiliency and building capacity in communities. And I think in particular what we realized that we need to go more beyond common practice, and it's actually single views maybe in disciplinary domains. We have to be testing what means transdisciplinarity really. And in our approach of that, it is how do we find this common ground, in particular in 3 systemic contexts of resiliency and community capacity building. And those are urban, maybe even architectural systems, food systems, and health systems. And I speak maybe a few words to that. So in urban systems, in particular, we can think that going through still the pandemic, right, it turned us all somewhere into beginners in some form, and we realize, yeah, we are free of our usual ways of doing things that are no longer really an option going forward, right? So maybe one keyword we should remember is we have to rethink our past practices. And with that, it means also we rethink behaviors and processes. And it brings me to the term of the circular economy. We have to think how we design waste and transportation out of our systems. And in particular, recently we realized that actually materials that are so toxic in the end need also be somehow phased out in our system. So this whole urban ecosystem needs to be rethought. And I would share, of course, the thought of Will McDonough in a sense that saying, yeah, the circular economy is actually really a very ancient idea, right? And it becomes modern right now. In that sense, it is now really taking, making, reusing, redesigning, upcycling, etc. Right? So it's the 3rd industrial revolution, and in that sense, it's really restorative by design, and we have to work on that, and the architects are playing a major role in that. And then the other, let's say, group here is food systems, right? I think mostly neglected. Also, I heard some comments this evening. In the US, we were struggling a lot, particularly, I think, under COVID. We realized that even in this economy, we are facing rising food insecurity. And it's, of course, because of food supply challenges. And so we realize it's actually the local culture, which is embedded in the food ecosystem. And that's driven by the very need somehow to eat, to provide then also employment. And it impacts land, water, and many other resources, which are part of the larger urban ecosystem. And this drives in production, processing, and maybe in distribution. And though right there, I think we believe is the opportunity to experiment with design on many scales, and then create interventions where you can rethink the system approach. And then the 3rd category is health systems. In that sense, from an ecosystem perspective, we believe it's the lived experience, in particular the 4 paradigms that we want to discuss maybe in a moment. And I want to bring in here also a brief comment from my collaborator, Chris Lower. And
so hi, everybody. I'm Chris Lower, the creator of Umio, and I'm really sorry that I cannot be there tonight in person, but it's a pleasure to be here nevertheless via recorded message. So first, may I just congratulate the editors and all contributors on the publication of this very important and timely and new book. Christian and I are really delighted to be one of the contributors. So to briefly summarize our chapter, Design as Health, the Open City Paradigm, we argue for a novel, transdisciplinary and more integrated design framework, one that's centered on real lived experience, what we can call an urban real lived experience ecosystem. Using the example of the entangled and interactional nature of food and health and care systems, we suggest that seeing urban communities through this primary lens of real lived experience and their interactional creation can help drive a transdisciplinary unity of focus and also enhance our collective design imagination. We can better capture and respond to societal challenges that become manifest and persist in actual real lived experience. And we can then respond more inclusively to differences in current and also desired experience and the varying capacities in urban populations, neighborhoods, and groups to access and realize them. In short, we argue that a real experience ecosystem mode of design thinking will advance our knowledge of the content and forces forming real experiences within urban communities, can shift our thinking on the meaning of smart and of ecosystems too, can reframe our understanding and models of value, and help redefine then how we can create resilient, flourishing, and creative urban communities for all citizens and stakeholders, and that have real impact in actual experience. And by real impact, I mean the interactional creation of enduring outcomes, affects, capacities, movements, and flows that together form desired real lived experiences and that are attained equitably, inclusively, economically, and with ecological balance. So that's our chapter in a nutshell. We'd love to hear your feedback on our contribution, and if you have any questions or ideas on our thinking and framework for enacting an urban experience ecosystem model of design and creation, then do please reach out to Christian or myself. Okay, so that's all for now. I wish you success with the book launch and enjoy the rest of the session. Thanks and see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Christian and your colleague. And now, next speaker is Paola Borin. Good morning, Paola. Paola
Good afternoon. Just a few minutes ago.
Just afternoon.
Yeah,
Paola
it's
Borin.
12:05 p.m. here, so just past midday, which is amazing. Once in a lifetime for New Zealand to be presenting during daytime.
Yeah, you are.
Kia ora, Paola. Sorry, I have to say this.
Hello, Paola.
Kia ora, everyone. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Paola lives in our future. Paola Borin is Associate Professor of Architectural Technology and Sustainability at the School of Architecture and Planning of the University of Auckland in New Zealand, where she is the school director and co-founder and co-director of the Future Cities Research Hub. Her research addresses the link between architecture, technology, and environment, with a focus on adaptive reuse, sustainable and regenerative design, and post-occupancy evaluation of building and neighborhoods. Paola's research interest lies on the nexus across design, human comfort, and environmental sustainability, as well as on innovation through creative and regenerative process. Paola, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Could you please confirm you are seeing the right presentation and not the presenter view?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Cool. So first of all, of course, many thanks to Alessandro for organizing this amazing forum today, and congratulations and thank you to Maurizio, Maria and Antonio for this terrific achievement of the publication of the book. And also thank you for your moderation today, Maurizio. You are keeping the time very well, so it's possible for everyone to present. I also want to extend my sincere congratulations to all the authors and contributors to this book and for their terrific presentations today. It's been really interesting to see all this knowledge being shared in this forum. So my contribution to the book is related to heritage conservation and community resilience. As Maurizio said in the introduction, I do work in the area of sustainable heritage conservation, and I've been doing this for several years now. And it's been really an interesting process for me to see how this topic could align very well with all the work that has been done on the Peccioli Charter. So the topic is complex, so I will try to bring a few, let's say, key points to this conversation today, and I'm happy to expand let's say, with other further conversations later on. So humanity has always dealt with the issue of maintaining, repairing, and restoring our historic buildings to new uses and to respond to the continuously changing need of the society. The contextualization of these needs in the contemporary discourse requires an extensive consideration on climate change and how to take climate change action through a holistic and effective approach involving both the natural and the built environment. And we cannot forget this very strong link between the natural and the built environment. The ICOMOS document that you can see on the slide, the future of our pasts, has finally drawn the attention on our cultural heritage, tangible and intangible, and again, this is very important, and how this can be affected by climate change. Historic buildings are more sensitive to climate changes and severe weather events. They are more sensitive to other natural pressures like earthquakes, and they are more sensitive to the effects of neglect, subuse, and poor indoor conditions. All factors that make our heritage environments a non-renewable resource, and we have to treat it as such. It means that our heritage and historic buildings need to be preserved as living bodies if we want them to be available for future generations. But there is also a really major opportunity lying within this non-renewable source. And it is a positive change towards the reduction of environmental impacts, the improvement of building and community sustainability and resilience, while contributing to the revitalization of local economies. Architects, engineers, policymakers, governments, designers, developers, we are all therefore urged to reflect on the potential impacts of climate change on heritage building, as heritage may already be subject to strong pressure and risks related to decay, lack of maintenance and redundancy, on top of other vulnerabilities that may occur in vulnerable areas such as those with hydrogeological instability, depopulation and abandonment following catastrophic natural events like the earthquakes. And in these, Italy and New Zealand have been, unfortunately, on a very common place there. If cultural heritage is, as defined by UNESCO, the legacy of physical artifacts and intangible attributes of a group of society that are inherited from past generations, maintained in the present, and bestowed for the benefits of future generations, what is necessary to retain the legacy of historically significant buildings and places is much more than a physical conservation. And this understanding should be fully embraced in order to fulfill the vision of future sustainability and resilience. Ultimately, the multiplicity of heritage values that supports the attachment between people and their places and communities has been identified by ICOMOS as one of the most important predictors of the successful achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing the role of heritage as a driver and enabler of sustainable development. And to me, this is a very dear concept and a very dear topic. Recently, the well-known triple bottom line of environmental, economic, and social sustainability has been expanded, finally, I would say, to a fourth area to include the cultural sustainability. Prior to these, let's say, extended meaning of sustainability, culture had always been ascribed to the social sustainability sphere. But the recognition of cultural aspects as additional independent character of the same sustainability vision is a fundamental consideration in historic buildings, which should be managed so that their heritage significance is retained for a present and future generation. From a sustainability standpoint, it is really important to remark that the conservation of historical buildings is in close relationship with the retention of the cultural legacy that comes with them. And in light of this expanded and more clearly articulated meaning of sustainability, it is more relevant to consider the concept of cultural sustainability as aligned with the preservation of a pre-existing building construction and site. The restoration process in its modern sense can be identified accordingly as an action that is sustainable from a cultural point of view with respect to an existing heritage whose cultural value is recognized and its transmission to future generations sought. Building adaptation as a process has been investigated extensively by scholars, by designers, by architects, and by many professionals. A very important scholar, Douglas, defines the adaptation as any work to a building over and above maintenance to change its capacity, function, or performance. The Peccioli Charter defines adaptation as changing a place to suit the existing use or a proposed use. Focusing on the concept of place, there is a geographically defined area, including natural and built environments with tangible and intangible value, rather than on a physical boundary of a building. This association and definition was supported by ICOMOS New Zealand as well in their Charter for the Conservation of Places of Cultural Heritage Value, where adaptation is defined as the process of modifying a place, again, for a compatible use while retaining its cultural heritage value, pointing out that this process includes both alteration and addition activities. So it's not just maintaining the status quo. The scope of adaptation works can be very wide, and depending on the extent and nature of the changes proposed for the building in order to respond to the transformed needs of a society. But it also depends on the shearing layer of change considered. Brand demonstrated that a building is composed by multiple dimensions, all equally important, all living together at the same time, progressively moving from the inner core, the people inhabiting it, and this is a really important point of view, a people-centric view, to the outside, furniture, equipment, space, plan, services, building structure, building scheme, and towards the surrounding site, location and context. So all equally important, all mutually informing one another. The more we move towards the outside and the surrounding, the higher the lifespan of the layer considered. Therefore, the impact of adaptation works is not limited to the physical boundary of a building, but it extends to the environment. Beyond that, to enter the realm of urban design, urban planning, landscaping, defining a stronger connection with the city and the wider community. Working on these interconnected and interdependent dimensions is key to enabling community resilience. And we can define community resilience as the ability of a community to tackle a disturbance by anticipating for it, preparing for it, responding to it, and recovering from it. And thus, to provide any adjustment that can respond to anticipated or actual consequences associated with climate change. In conclusion, when working on the conservation, restoration, and reuse of historic buildings, all four sustainability aspects and dimensions, the environmental, the social, the economic, and the cultural, should be taken into account, and an appropriate balance sought between them, understanding that they are complementary and mutually dependent rather than isolated aspects. These new approaches to sustainable development and resilience must consider multidisciplinarity and long-term thinking and actions in order to preserve historic knowledge and local community values and achieving a people-centered and place-based solutions. Creativity and innovation supporting the advancement of technology, but also the contemporary use of traditional knowledge and skills, as well as embracing disruptive and radical visions and methods, will reaffirm the potential of culture as a driver for sustainable development encouraging communities to be open, flexible, and adaptive in their planning towards change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Paola. Brilliant contribution. Now I ask Maria and Alessandro to make the conclusion, because you are the landlords of the initiative.
Well, I first would like to thank, we are very, very grateful for this conversation and the incredible presentations contributing in so and multiple ways to the discourse and to the book. So just my job is to say thank you. And I know it's very late, it's already 8:18 in New York. So I don't want to spend too much time here in additional talking, but I'm just grateful and thankful for your presence tonight. Thank you.
Alessandro?
Thank you, everybody. Also, no, thank you, everybody. As Maria said, how can I say? I have to thank you for the generosity of the speakers to stay with us late. So just accept my let's say
solidarity.
Sorry.
Your solidarity.
Solidarity is a good thing. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you, guys. Has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nice to
you.
Bye-bye.
Hope to see you in
Bye-bye.
person.
Thank you.
Bye.
Pre-order the
Bye.
book.
See you.
Let's
See you,
pre-order the
everyone.
book, and